was from a video a few years ago. Let's hope I can do a little better on this bowl. Welcome back to another four-ways collaboration with my collaboration partners Richard Raffin, Sam Angelo, and Tomislav Tomasec, all of us turning the same project. Today our project is a thin wall bowl. Do you always play it safe? I'm not talking about personal safety, but I mean when you're turning a bowl you tend to leave the walls too thick. Today we're going to work on that a little bit and work on making them a little bit thinner. I challenge you to try this and push your skills a little bit. Maybe it'll give you some confidence to push the boundaries just a little bit more. In this video, I'm going to show you my techniques and my tricks for turning a thin wall bowl. All right, I was getting a little bit nervous about finding a fresh piece of green wood, and the closest thing I could come to it is I got this nice piece of pear from Michael Gibson. I generally like it to be just sopping wet fresh, and this is about 4 months old. But I like turning Bradford pear. It turns thin real well. It's got a very ring diffuse grain structure. It's very tight rings. Growth ring's not real prominent. Bad news is that it's already started cracking, and this has just happened in the last few days because I just got it from Michael this with just a few days ago. But this is going to be the bottom. I can turn away this crack. It doesn't go very deep. This is the center of the tree. This is where the pith is. This is the bark area. That's going to be the bottom. So let's go ahead and we're going to mount this thing on a screw chuck. So I'm going to go ahead and drill an appropriate size hole. So before I turn a sopping piece of green wood, and again it's not sopping wet, but it is green, I'm going to put on a little WD-40 to just keep reduce the chances of rusting on my lathe bed. Also makes it a little bit easier to slide the banjo and the tailstock around, so that's always a good thing. So for a piece like this, a woodworm screw is certainly a good choice that comes with your chuck, but I found from after watching Richard Raffin a while that I made a screw chuck, and I think a screw chuck is a faster solution that holds just as well as a woodworm screw when you've got a large backing like this. So we're going to turn this on at a slow speed and just put it on there. Whoops. I want to make sure I don't have any little shards sticking out. All right, now we're going to tighten it up, put it on spindle lock, and just tighten it. Okay, I think that'll do it. Now we're going to bring up tailstock support. This is an 8-inch block, which is well within the range of a mini lathe. So first thing I want to do is get rid of some of the cracking. And even though this is a good discussion of cracking wood, even though he has sealed this with anchor seal or some other type of wax emulsion. He even had it wrapped with a piece of shrink wrap, stretch wrap plastic. It still started shrinking, I think, as soon as it got into not sure, I didn't notice it this morning when the cracking took place. I've had it out in my garage, but the humidity's pretty low. I think it's a little lower here in the house, but it's still pretty low outside as well. So I'm going to use a 1/2-inch bowl gouge to kind of take it down a little bit past that cracking, and get the speed up a little bit. Since it's round, it's the weight is equally distributed, so all right, let's mark about where the tenon's going to be. Let's go ahead and start making the tenon. I know the tenon needs to be smaller than this cone center I'm using, or this, not a cone center, it's 90-degree center. Now to get nice clean shoulders, I like to use a 3/8-inch detail gouge because I find it's the easiest thing for me to control and get in nice and tight. I'm doing a parallel tenon because I'm using record power these normal jaws that call for a parallel tenon. Okay, so I've got it nice and flat with a clean shoulder where the jaws are gonna grip. Now let's go ahead and start turning away some of this. Start shaping the profile here. Just the tool rest again as I've taken this down. Okay, that's got it around, got a little bit of cleanup to do. Let's get the tool rest a little closer. I'm going to switch to a 1/2-inch detail gouge. It's got a little more swept back wing for this final outside pass here. Okay. All right, I'm happy with, generally happy with that cut. I need to do a little more cleanup down here. Still got just a few tool ripples here. I'm going to go ahead and switch to a shear scraper, recognizing that I'll probably have to do this again when I turn the bowl around, but let's just see if I can't smooth it a little bit. I've honed off the original burr, and I'm just going to use this carbide burnisher to refresh that burr. Going to raise it up about 45 degrees, try to find that burr where it cuts best. And we're getting some nice shavings. Okay, I'm happy with that surface. Now let's examine that crack. It's down to the bottom, and it's going in here just a little bit. I think I need to get rid of a little bit of that, but I seem to have plenty of wood. It's still going to be a nice thick bowl. Let's just come back in and take this down a little bit. Nice clean shoulder, and then blend this in a little bit more. Nice small shavings. Okay, let's go ahead and turn it around. All right, now getting it off, sometimes the challenge with a screw chuck is it does hold amazingly well. So I lock it, and I'll see if I can get it off. The chuck's coming off. So what I'm going to wind up doing is I'm going to grab this with another chuck. This may wind up showing up in a blooper video. There we go. Now it's coming loose. That just goes to show you how extremely tight this is. Okay, so let's take this chuck off. All right, I've got this one on here already. So let's just thread it on, and then we'll evaluate
how good a job I did of chucking it. Okay, now first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this surface, and we're going to get rid of this sharp edge. Take off tailstock, live center. Okay, I've got it remounted where the I could not get a piece of paper in between the jaws and the wood. Let's go ahead and clean it off. Okay, now let's get rid of that sharp edge, because not only will cut you, it'll cauterize the wound. All right, now that I've got it almost flat here. All right, before I worry too much more about this, now I'm going to true up the back. In most instances for bowls, I don't need to do that. I didn't pick the very best chuck for it, which was, I probably ought to even consider going back to normal jaws so I can get it a little bit closer. But I can worry about cleaning up that very bottom when I reverse the bowl to finish off the tenon. So I just want to true up the rest of this outside. And I think I'm going to do that with the shear scraper. See how close it gets. Unfortunately, I can't get in the other direction, so let me find another scraping solution. Okay, I'm going back to my original scraper, which is a old Harbor Freight 1-inch skew. That's now a spear point scraper, because I can come in from either direction with this. So it's not the best steel, cheap Chinese, but I can get in there. Now, rarely do I even bother to true up the back of a bowl, because I generally make mine thick enough where it's off of 30/2 of an inch or so. It's not going to make any difference. But for when you're turning thin like this, you want to make sure you get it trued up. Okay, that looks good. I'll worry about sanding when I reverse it. But I think I've got it trued up. So now we're going to go back. Now we're going to go back to hollowing, and I'm not sure how thin I'm going to go with this. It just kind of depends on how the wood performs for me. I didn't do a nice job cleaning up that edge. I got a little tear out. I've got to work on that a little bit. So I think I'll do that first. I'm going to go back to. I'm going to grab whatever wood I have available. It's going to be this spindle gouge, and just kind of clean up that edge a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to apply a little water to this to keep it wet. So I'm going to put a towel down here, kind of soak up any water, and I'm going to put a little tray of water down here. And I'm just going to wipe a little water on here. I'm not interested in it getting dry on me. I want it to stay wet. Especially that edge there. Okay. And I'll apply that periodically. All right. Now the key on turning thin is taking it down a little, one section at a time, and then blending the sections. I'm going to start with a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. We're going to get a little bit out of the middle. Get the speed up a little bit. Although I'm not too concerned about it skating back, but you know, if you're not careful, you can see if you come in wrong, it's going to skate all the way across and ruin the edge. So it's a good opportunity to practice that by coming in with the bevel perpendicular. I like to break it with my thumb, brace it with my thumb, and then make a nice slice and cut. You can't ride the bevel on an entry cut when there's no bevel, there's no wood to support that cut. This is not perfectly flat, so it's trying to skate on me a little bit. I can definitely go thinner than that. I'm going to slice in. Now I want this to be a functional bowl, so I could probably make it thinner, but I would prefer something, a wetter piece of wood. You want the rim, if you go super thin, in any case, you want that rim just a little bit thicker than when you start taking it down. If you get it super thin, you need some strength here. So this is 3/16 of an inch. I can go a little bit smaller than that. But I don't think I want to go any smaller than that, or it won't be useful at all. So now I can go ahead and remove some of this wood going straight in. I want to leave a mass in the middle to give it some strength so it won't flop around out on the outside if it gets too thin. Now it's time to go down a little bit further, and you want to do that in increments of maybe a half an inch, perhaps 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to switch to a spindle gouge, just because I feel like I'm going to have a little less friction on the wood. Don't want to extend too far over the tool rest with this tool, but light cuts. Just wipe a little water on here. And let's see how we're doing. Okay, feels good. Yep, just continue it down. Ride the bevel. I'm just eyeballing it to have it go down, then I'll caliper it in just a moment. Use my digital calipers here. Yeah, I've got to work a little bit on joining that, blending those two cuts, so let's do that. I'm just going to come in here like this, using this as a shear scraper. Okay, that's doing fine. Now I can go ahead and take away a little bit more out of the middle and continue that cut down. But cutting into side grain is easier than if I went this way into end grain. Ride the bevel. Just feel it. Nice shavings. Got a little bit of a... I've got to deal with this before I go too much further. I didn't get it as smooth on that join, so let me find a scraper and clean that up. I'm going to use this, I'm not sure what size, 5/8 inch negative rake scraper to just clean up that join just a little bit. Bring it up just a little bit for a shear scrape. And that feels pretty clean. Now the other thing I can do while I'm doing this, keep applying water to it. And then since it is green wood and it's going to keep moving, you do want to take a moment and tighten up your, as the wood compresses when it's green, tighten it up just a little bit. Make sure you got a nice snug grip as it changes. Okay. All right. The other thing you can do while it's in this situation is you can go ahead and sand, because it's going to be that can help you deal with some of those minor tool marks. Right now I've got a little strength to it. I think I want to get the outside as well. I'm using 100 grit. Very light pressure. When I go down a little deeper, I'm going to have to support that sanding with my my fingers. So we're going to go ahead and use some calipers here. So I'm going to get it down, and then I'm just going to look at the gap here as I come around and try to keep a uniform or slightly. So right there I can tell it's thicker, so I can take down a little bit more. I'm going to use a little smaller spindle gouge. The smaller the tool, the less friction. You certainly want it sharp. There, that's a little nicer blend. Then again, I just want to touch that up with a little bit of sandpaper as we go. And I just soak this in the water so it's wet sanding. Let's get a little more out of the middle and go down a little further. We just keep doing this in stages. Ride the bevel, maybe at about 2 o'clock. I got lots of support in the middle for those big shavings. Then we'll get a fresher piece of sandpaper. Slow the speed down a little bit while I'm sanding. Now I need to start thinking about supporting it, so let me look for a good supporting solution. So let me show you how I'd support the back side. I'm using a piece of foam-backed sandpaper. The grit's probably not real important. I looked for one that didn't want 80 grit, didn't want 400 grit, and I found a piece that was 180. So I can support that with my fingers to give equal pressure on this side as I am on the inside. Again, slow the speed down a little bit while you're sanding, maybe a half to a third of what you're turning at. Now, when I'm showing you the steps, this is not nearly as thin as I could make it, but again, I want to make a functional bowl out of it. Ladies don't like bowls that are too flimsy that you can't use for anything. They're afraid you blow on it and they'll break. Now you're going to build up this heavy slurry, but all you got to do is just soak it in the water, and you can use a toothbrush or a brass brush or whatever you want to kind of clean it off a little bit. Continue that process. Continue using it, and it'll last quite a while. See how well I'm doing? I can still tell I'm a little thicker than I wanted to be right here. I can definitely make it a little bit thinner. I'm gonna go back to that 1/2 inch spindle gouge because I'm leaning over the tool rest just a little bit, and I can support the cut with my hand and do this with one hand as well. Again, using that sandpaper, and I can soak it as well. Slow the speed down again. Another aspect of this project is you've got to do it all at one time. You got to drink your coffee before you start. Don't drink too much so your hands are shaky. But you can't take a lunch break. Coming back in. So now I'm fighting end grain all the way across. This is where, a scraper sometimes works better, or a bottom feeder bowl gouge with a very blunt grind. More. I'm going to just wipe these edges here with that sandpaper, just so it doesn't get too, definitely flopping on me. I can't go back, move too much. I'm going to switch to a even smaller bowl gouge. I'm going to switch to a very similar shape. It's rather blunt, rather steep. Not something you'd do too deep in a deep bowl, but it's more of a finishing tool. Let's look at blending those. Still rather thick. So let's get rid of a little bit more here in the middle. Give me room to get to it. Got a few tool marks here that I'd like to get rid of, but I think it may be far enough in the bowl where it's not moving as far there, so let's look and see. That's where the bump is, and that's where I've gotten some wood movement, so got a lot of wood there. Let's get rid of some of the middle here and we'll be about ready to get this hollowed. This might make a lovely lampshade, but that's not my goal. So let's just kind of check, see how far we got. Now look at it from the side here, or the top, and I can see, you can't tell from that camera angle, but I've got, good 5/8 of an inch of thickness there. So I've got a lot of wood to get rid of here. Now I'm leaning a little far over the tool rest for this tool, so I've got to take very light cuts. All right, let me show you how much the wood has moved. It's going in and out, at least a 1/2 inch. So it's definitely, you can't go back. That's the point. That's why you got to get at it and stay after it. And you want to make sure it's not going to hit the tool rest when you make any adjustments. Still tell I'm a little thicker here than I want to be. Your hands are more sensitive than your eyes. Okay, I got a little bit, got maybe another 1/4 inch that I can use to smooth that shape a little bit. Light application. All right, that's gotten it. Okay, now I think I'll go back to doing a little bit of hand sanding here with the grain. And when it comes to sanding, an open weave sandpaper works great for this kind of wet sanding where it creates a slurry. Something like Abernet, or in this case Wonder Weave. This is 120 grit, and I can do a little of this by hand at the bottom. All right, time to reverse this. All right, let's take this out. All right, let's find a chuck that I think will fit. Yep, I think this will do just fine. Just a shop-made chuck. And then I've got a rotary adapter that just plugs in the back through the spindle. And you can see that cracking continued. I've got a little bit into the bottom of the bowl. I hope I can remove enough of the tenon to eliminate the cracking. I'm using a tailstock live center with a 90-degree cone that doesn't press in there. It just holds it flat. It doesn't continue to damage the wood or try to split it. It just holds it in place nicely. This is a Record Power Carnet Falcon system with interchangeable tops here. Yeah, that's cracking is going pretty deep. Let's hope I can get rid of it before it blows up. All right, so let's just get after this with a bowl gouge. going straight in. Whoa. I've got to adjust this a little bit. I didn't have it on center. I should have tested it a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Now the bottom's running fairly true. I keep the speed down no more than about 600 when I'm using the vacuum chuck. Let's check for flatness. Just about there. I could take care a little bit more in the middle. At this point in time, I switch from a bowl gouge generally to that detail spindle gouge, which is kind of pointy, real strong, and leans over to a rest, and I can get in there very safely to do any little minor cleanup. But I want to kind of make sure that the bottom is dealt with before I remove that, so I want to go ahead and get in here with trying to find my wet rag. Little bit of sanding while I've got it stationary, just to get rid of any big tool marks. And blend that edge in there, in case if I didn't clean it up real good the first with the gouge, I need to go ahead and clean that up. Now if I want to go ahead and take a pass with a scraper here, I could certainly do so. I don't want to get out here and disturb this, but you know, keep an eye on the vacuum chuck and just get rid of any tool marks. And that's plenty flat. All right, so we're going to call that good. Okay. This will just suck the moisture right out of it. And yeah, so I've got a tiny little crack there that I don't think will open up on me. I don't think. I hope not. So I could have made it thinner. Let me show you how thin. Here's an example of a super thin bowl I turned 10 years ago. And if we measure it, it's just about 3/4 of a millimeter. If you turn one that small, you need to put a little bead around the outside edge, give the rim just a little bit more stability. Problem with these, you know, they are so fragile that, you know, if you drop it, they will break, they will flex. But it doesn't take much to break one. But a lot of fun and a serious challenge. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bag this into a paper bag, and I'm going to put it away for about a week or so, and then I'll come in there with a hand sander and try to sand it. If it's super thin, you wouldn't be able to use a hand sander, but this is thick enough. I can come in there, I think, deal with some of these tool marks with an electric sander.
I put it in paper bags for a few days. You know, the straws are very short on the end grain on a thin turn bowl, so it didn't take long with my shop humidity down to 21%. Then I power sanded it and hand sanded it, put on 3 coats of Minwax antique oil, my favorite finish, and I haven't buffed it yet, but I will. Turning thin can be a challenge. Too thin, and it's not real practical, but it can still be a lot of fun. I was a little rusty on bowl turning. Frankly, it's been several months since I've turned a bowl. Sometimes bowls are a target of opportunity when I get a green log in, and then I do a lot of bowl turning at that point in time. I hope you'll watch the other members of the 4-way collaboration team, Richard Raffin, Sam Angelo, and Tomislav Tomasec, and learn more about turning thin bowls. And y'all remember, y'all stay safe. Come on back, you hear?